let's take a look at our top selections. Hi, everybody. Dan Illman, Mike Beer, 3 graded stakes races on tap at Belmont on Saturday, including the Westchester, usually the local prep race for the Metropolitan Handicap. Of course, Kentucky Derby is the major attraction on Saturday, and you can get everything you need for the Derby at DRF.com with your one-stop Derby shop. Derby packages include PPs, betting strategies, clocker reports, and lots more, all at DRF.com. Here's the field for the Westchester. It is not a big field, but there are some storylines in here. How good will the number 6 Dr. Post, who was a good 3-year-old, return at 4? And will Mr. Buff, the uber-talented New York bred, finally achieve graded stakes success?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Mr. Buff felt like he was in a great spot a couple of weeks ago, Dan, in the Excelsior, where he's going to be a heavy favorite. Unfortunately, he had to scratch that day. This spot, it may not be that much tougher, but I do think it's a little bit tougher.
Let's take a look at the Timeform US Pace Projector. We know how Mr. Buff likes to run. That's on the engine. I think Backside of the Moon's going to give it to him. I think Mr. Buff's going to get the lead. You mentioned he had to scratch out of the Excelsior. He showed some signs of colic, but he could be in control of this down the backstretch.
Yeah, I mean, you expect to see him come out of there running. That's what he likes to do. He looks like the best speed in this race, and if he gets loose, he's not going to be easy to run down.
Wicked Trick showed some signs when he won 6 races in a row, the summer of 2019 into the winter of 2020. Missed a little bit of time, and he kind of hasn't really proven himself as a stakes horse. Let's watch his last race. Now winners of 3 other than for a $100,000 tag, and he just loomed on the outside, Mike. I know the pace wasn't very fast. I think a lot of folks would say, if Wicked Trick's going to win this race, he probably had to have at least run second here.
Yeah, I would sort of look at it that way. I mean, all in all, he does run fine here. This was a pretty tough allowance field. He just got a really good ride from Eric Cancel because it felt like a race that maybe the pace would be fast. The pace wasn't fast. So Cancel just put him right up close. He took a 3-wide trip. And as you said, he was right there with dead aim in the stretch. He just wasn't quite good enough. This horse is okay, Dan. He's going to be a price in here, but I'm going to look elsewhere.
When Mr. Buff scratched out of the Excelsior, the number 2 Backside of the Moon emerged as the main speed in that race. They didn't go very fast, and Backside of the Moon couldn't hold on. It was a bit of a disappointing performance, and I thought he disappointed a little bit in his prior race. He's a 9-year-old. He's a very likable horse, but this is a tough spot.
It is. We'll see if he can bounce back here. They're also going to cut him back in distance a little bit here, Dan. They like to keep this horse going a little bit longer. They're going to cut him back to the 1-turn mile and see if that makes a difference. He ran the big 106 when he won the Queens County in December. He's tailed off a little bit since then.
Maybe Top Seed can get close to the pace in here and maybe sit second off Mr. Buff early. This is a horse that showed a little something last year in Kentucky, especially the second to Fearless, who's turned out to be a pretty nice horse. Last time out of Keeneland was his first race off of a really long layoff. He tried to make a move in between horses on the turn, and he tired. I think he might have needed that race, and Shug's showing some confidence, throwing him back into the stakes ranks for the first time.
Yeah, coming back pretty quickly here 2 weeks later, right into a graded stakes race. I agree with you that he ran okay last time, especially, Dan, that pace was pretty competitive. I mean, when South Bend wins the race, you know where he came from. He came from out of it and ran that race down. This horse he got a little tired in there, but maybe that's to be expected off the long layoff. I mean, he's going to have to improve, but he will be forward in this race. If I was going to try to upset the favorites, it would probably be with him.
Lymanite was graded stakes placed as a 2-year-old. He's been claimed several times since, and he ran in the Excelsior last time out. Modernist probably just ended up being the best horse in that race once Mr. Buff scratched. Lymanite, though, to me, just seems like the kind of horse he needs the right trip. He needs the right setup. Maybe they'll go fast for him here.
Yeah, I agree with that stuff. I mean, I suppose he could fall into the right trip and get a piece of this. His recent form is fine. I'm not going to knock this horse. He's been running one good race after another. I just don't like him that much in this field.
Mr. Buff wins for the 17th time in the Stymie. Let's watch that effort at Aqueduct last time out, a 1-turn mile. He was able to get right to the lead. Mr. Buff changes leads on cue, and he digs down deep to hold off the aforementioned Lymanite. Really, what else can you say about Mr. Buff other than he loves to win races? Probably his best distance is 1 1/8, but he'll likely be in control of this from the start.
Yeah, he's the horse to beat in here. He ran great in this race that we're watching right now, Dan. This was a really fast pace. The horse that winds up third, Music Harp, chased him the entire way. They were both tired at the end. That allowed Lymanite to make it close. But Lymanite, I mean, just had all the best of it there. Mr. Buff ran a giant race last time.
Dr. Post was a good 3-year-old for Todd Pletcher. We haven't seen him since the Jim Dandy, where he was the beaten favorite against Mystic Guide. He was very wide on the backstretch and into the stretch that day, and we know how good Mystic Guide was. Of course, he was third in the Haskell behind Authentic. We know how good Authentic was, and all he did before that was finish second in the Belmont, which last year was the first leg of the Triple Crown. Pletcher excels off layoffs, so it's one less thing to worry about.
Yeah, right. I mean, this horse, all in all, was pretty good as a 3-year-old, Dan. I mean, they took on the 2 best 3-year-olds in the country pretty early in this horse's career. I mean, Belmont and Haskell against those 2 horses, and he was not embarrassed. I mean, I think he showed he belonged. His Jim Dandy wasn't great. I didn't think he was sharp in that race. I also thought he got a terrible ride in there. They stopped on him right after that, and they're going to come back now as a 4-year-old. If he comes back and takes a step forward, I felt like he was probably the only one who could beat Mr. Buffett here. And as you've already mentioned, Pletcher is great off of layoffs like this.
He certainly is, which is why maybe I overthought this a little bit when I made my selections, catching Dr. Post off of a layoff, catching Mr. Buff off a little bit of an illness. We take a look at our top picks for this race, and I just thought maybe Wicked Trick has the recency advantage over those 2 horses and maybe could trip out. He'll be a giant price in here, but like you, I think Dr. Post in some ways is the horse to beat. He has a lot of upside.
He's got a lot of upside. We'll see if he takes the step forward. If he doesn't, Mr. Buff's probably wire in this field.
6531 for Mike, 1635 for me. The Grade 3 Westchester, the local prep for the prestigious Met Mile at Belmont on Saturday.